Welcome, everyone. This is our first of a few personal stories and interviews of the members and the mentors of the Mentoring Club. The general theme of this is we want to talk about how career leadership, transitions of career paths, and stories of how some of our mentors navigated their own life with them in their driver's seat. And we want to try to provide values through these stories that are significant, relatable, and impactful in order to provide a sense of high value to those at their fork in their career or their journey in life. Do a little introduction for Hong here. Hong has lived and journeyed under the banner of change and diversity. He is a man of many talents that span across different countries, cultures, education, industry sectors, and he's a pioneer of his own curiosity. He has a plethora of traits that include, but not limited to, high emotional intelligence. He's very impactful, high integrity. He's very honest, agile, intentional, articulate, kind, and caring. And all these align with the fabric of his being. He is someone who I've always admired since meeting him, and he's a pivotal member and leader in our own community, which is the Mentoring Club. And here's our very own Hong Nguyen. Welcome. Tell us a little about your background, where you came from, your education, and your career journey up until now.
I want to share, going back a little bit to my childhood, so for everybody to know me more than just what I do professionally, my life journey, more than just career journey. I was born in Vietnam in 1968, right after the big all-out Tet Offensive, where North Vietnam pushed to take over South Vietnam but failed, with a lot of casualties and deaths on both sides. I mean, now that I say that, it's very dramatic, but as a child, I thought the whole thing was quite exciting for that matter. When I was 10, we left. At that time, my dad was sent to Brazil as South Vietnamese ambassador to Brazil. I grew up in Rio de Janeiro at that time in 1968 up until 1972. Yeah, that was my first time out of Vietnam and living in South America. Quite exciting for me in any case. That was the year when Brazil won their third World Cup in soccer. So very, very exciting. In 72, when the US started the Nixon era opening up with China, the US wanted to get out of Vietnam, literally. There was this peace negotiations in Paris. So my dad was called to be part of that. And my family moved to Paris and studied there. I grew up in Paris. So the thing is, when I was a kid, especially in Vietnam, I was such a horrible student, threatened to be expelled many times. But increasingly, I was a better student increasingly, and especially coming to France, where people say that's very, very hard. I actually flourished there. I just did better and better. High school in France are the formative years for any French person. I grew up there pretty much like a French person. Then 75, that's when South Vietnam was lost entirely to North Vietnam. We were without a country and we were looking to come to the US. And we did come to the US as refugees. At the same time that I went to college, the most important formative years for an American person, I studied in the US and then become very, very American. Just to share my formative years, and I think I learned a number of things. Let me just summarize. Growing up in France, I learned critical thinking and debate, especially from representing a political view that is a minority view at that time, not left-leaning. I was very used to that, very open to that. Human rights and civic rights are very important. That's the debate that I learned in France. Diversity of political opinions, and also some ethnic diversity, right, with many Arab and Africans in France, as opposed to Vietnam, where I had very little exposure to that. And in the US, of course, more changes, more diversity in many different ways. So that's my background. And then I grew up, I worked a lot in high tech, moved around, went back to Europe, and I had wanted to go work in Asia, kind of travel, professional evolution, but then came back to the US and the internet raged on. I came out to California and stayed here since then.
Since you have experience in France, what were more specifically your experiences in the US, and why did it lead you to going back to Asia and going back to Europe?
I think your question has to do with what drove me to make the career decisions I made throughout. The decision to have an international background was simply, I just woke up at that time. That was in the late 80s. I just thought that a lot was going on in the world. I started out as computer engineering. That's something that I learned in college at MIT. That was my first exposure to engineering as opposed to science and math, which is really my background. Engineering meaning creating new things and making things work, as opposed to knowing the deep theories about why things work, right? And calculating things. And that was new and fascinating to me. And that's why my first career out of college was very much computer engineering, computer development, software, hardware. That was the track I was on. Until I realized I didn't like to be so socially isolated, which is how most engineering work is. And then I interned at night with a market research firm in the Boston area and learned strategic importance of business and revenues and markets and things like that. And that woke me up to the importance of business and business results. That really led me to change my career drastically. 2 years out of college, I went back to business school. I embarked very much on that track of marketing, sales, business development, that sort of thing. And that took me for most of my career, actually, around the world and back in the US. So that was a lot of my journey. Now I've been working with projects, right? Things that the bigger deals that I worked on included more and more teams and more divisions and things like that, and things are project managed. That whole thing just captivated my interest. I actually learned a lot about project management formally, and then I ended up being a technology project manager for 6 years, doing that very, very formally. And even that changed when I realized that for technology, classic project management just doesn't cut it. And now we do in a new way with Agile. I learned and practiced that and started to teach it. My interest kept changing in terms of what I saw was important at the time. That's typically my pattern in my career.
I just want to get more deep into the reason why and the reason how your thought process was, and how did you know what to switch into? And were there any difficulties trying to figure out how to switch into a different area?
What did I run away from? Actually, 2 years out of college, I was still pursuing a master in computer science. When I realized that my passion is not as deep as my colleagues in terms of the technical work, they were so happy. Our little group back then, you have to sign up for computer time. You don't just have computer time. One day, our manager came and said, I have good news for you guys. You have your own computer for your little group. No more sign up and all these things. And everybody was so very, very elated. I was happy, of course, but I thought, no, these guys are like kids. Yeah, I'm happy, but they like kids with a new toy. And, what's up with them? And then soon enough, I realized the problem is not them, it's me. I don't like it as much. And how come? That drove me to a very early career crisis for me. Looking for what I want to do is a lot harder. So I went into introspection for a long period of time. I thought maybe I want to be a writer, maybe I want to be a journalist, or maybe I want to be a historian. And I talked to a lot of those folks actually for a period of probably a year or something before I interned at this consulting firm doing market research. When I did that, it's really captivated my interest entirely. That's what I found by doing, not that I look for it. I just try something and I found that I liked it. And that's really when I realized that business and business problems and business goals, those things are more interesting to me. They mean a whole lot more. To make a new widget is exciting, but a whole lot less exciting for me than to gain a new market. Big first transition right there.
The younger generation in today's world struggle with a term called imposter syndrome, where they are working job or career or field that they feel that no longer or is not really fitting to their identity. For those in the audience or the future audience who want to combat this imposter syndrome, how would you recommend them going about
Normally, the imposter syndrome means this, that you do something you don't know, as opposed to doing something you don't like, which is your question, right? So, yeah, let's say you have built up a career, let's say in engineering, like I did. Now that you don't like it anymore, typically people don't feel they have an imposter syndrome with that. They just are not very committed or enthused, right? Imposter means the opposite, that you approach a new field. And of course, in the beginning, by definition, you're not very good at it yet. Now, for me, I actually don't like to stay too long in something I don't like. I'm much more comfortable approaching something new that I like that maybe I don't know much about. I'm very, very comfortable with that. Obviously, I have found places where that's acceptable. I did get to develop new skills and approach new domains. I'm very fortunate with that. With my mentees nowadays, I do not force them. Everybody has different aspirations and level of comfort or discomfort, but I do bring up to my mentees whether they like what they do and what they think they like what they do. And I do bring up tests and surveys and things about values and skills that they like, and look at the skills that they're good at, whether they like those or they don't like those. That's important. Not that you can do, but do you want to do that, right? I do ask my mentees those questions so that they take hold of their career as opposed to holding down a job and earning a living, whether they like it or not. The first thing is to find out, introspect, talk to a lot of people, find out, and maybe intern somewhere or volunteer somewhere and get to know it and know by doing whether you like it. And then work out a transition, seek to make a change. Change and learning are by definition never comfortable. And at first, you're not going to be very good at it. That's why courage and conviction are important for you to start that journey of change. Yeah, this is a very important topic, a very, very important topic, because our life today, we're going to be disrupted several times during our lifetime. For a young person growing up today, they will face that. Hopefully, they're not going to make a change simply because something is pushing them towards that change, but more like that's the choice they will be making, right? To be in control. Be prepared to make changes, learn, pay the price, and make the change you want. I think that's my takeaway that I want to share with my mentees. I had mentioned the approach of making a change in career. Introspection is a big one. Talking to people, that's another big one. Trying things out, that's another really big one nowadays. And I absolutely encourage my mentees to do that. Very, very often I do that, which is taking tests and surveys. There are a ton of tests, the big five. There's a new test that's free. All these things are free. There's a new test by Ray Dalio. It's called Principles U. Those tests are fabulous for you to understand yourself better. And there are other things you can do. There is 360 degrees. There are all kinds of things. Actually, the mentoring club, a bunch of mentors have talked about their particular flavor of how to find out about yourself. They are convenient and fast and free. I really absolutely would encourage a lot of people to take advantage and do that and to find out what you would like to do.
In your career, you moved from engineering. Where else did you move from engineering, and steps that you took? How and why did you take those steps in particular?
I took the steps whenever I realized that something is more important. For example, business results, or sales. Actually, I started not too late, but not early enough to realize that sales are important. And eventually, by trying to realize that that's what I like to do, actually. And then I pursue that. If I were to go visit my past and see myself as a kid and give that kid an advice, I think the first advice I will give to that kid is go into sales. You find out you like it. That's your one career in life. To myself, not anybody else. To my younger self, if I went back, I would say that. And I would have started in sales directly and just stay with that path. As it is, my career has been a whole lot more convoluted because that was not the pure path I took. People have different inclinations. I mean, we are humans. We're not built the same way. I do want to relay something else. I did do multiple things I wish I had done so much earlier on. I was in engineering. I was an entrepreneur pretty early on as well. I was in sales for a while early on. I was in management consulting for a while fairly early on. I think this was before I turned 30, did all those different things. And then I ended up in Europe, working in France. One night over dinner, I was chatting with a colleague, and that colleague said, the best advice I can give a young person is to start working multiple careers so you know for yourself what you like and what you hate. You cannot know without doing. So do that, because later on you cannot change anymore and you need to settle, and you better settle on something you know you will be able to like and stay for the rest of your life. I thought his thought was right on, actually. Most people don't think that way. And if you do that and you end up late in life in something you don't like, that will be pretty, pretty bad and pretty sad. I did try multiple things, even late in my career. Late in your career to make changes, that will be more and more unsettling for most folks. For me, I got used to it, so no big deal. I know a lot of people for whom it will be very unsettling. Life is not linear. It's not a progression to making more and more money and get married and have children and retire. It's not. I've been there. I know it's not like that. I can tell by observing other folks, it's not like that either. In the times we're in now, where disruptions happen all the time and more frequently now, I don't think it will be the case for our lifetime. That's for sure.
During your path or your journey of trying things out, what kind of struggles did you go through when you're figuring things out for yourself in terms of a career change or going into a new field that you have no knowledge about?
You can research, you can take courses, and nowadays you can take short courses that are really good, actually, for that matter. You can, nowadays, I didn't know it way back then, I did it without knowing, actually. You can have a lot of informational interviews, talk to people in the field, especially in America more than elsewhere. People are very open to take on somebody who's intelligent and motivated and invested in the field, into the field, right? So that's is very possible in America, I think, more than elsewhere, I must say. That kind of change, you need to be committed and do that. And if you're invested in making the change, you will find them. I moved from high tech into utilities, right? I was interested in solar power, how we can become greener, and solar energy, wind energy, and the smart grids and all these things. I had all these things bubbling in my mind, and I was pursuing that. I didn't quite get that entirely, but I did move into electric and gas utility, working for PG&E, switching over from high tech, which had nothing to do with it. I have a friend who was trying to do the same with me, and one day he said, "Hong, you and I don't know anything about power. They won't take us." Well, they took me. They never took him. I mean, he's VP of engineering. He went pretty high up in HP, and if you talk about making money, he's doing a whole lot better than me. But he never succeeded in making that transition because he never believed he could. But I think you can. I mean, it's up to you. If you're really committed and vested, you can. So that's the smaller change. The bigger change that's much more difficult is the what I would call the social change, meaning your life that you built will not accommodate too easily that you are somebody different. The colleagues, your friends, your family, when they think of you in high tech, they will find you a complete stranger when you do something else. And why you are not over to the other side yet, you're a strange person, unhappy where you are. And to me, that's the hardest part. The transition is difficult. You are in no man's land for a while. That's the price you have to pay for that ticket to change.
What made you want to dive into mentorship and also the mentoring club while we're at it?
You commit, you sign up to mentor and guide somebody else to advance their career. I stepped into mentorship purely by chance upon the kind invitation of Liesel. So Liesel shared with me that she wanted to set up the mentoring club and asked if I would want to contribute and be a mentor. That resonated with me, to help people advance in their career and help them succeed. That completely resonated with me. One anti-value for me in a big, gigantic way is people who stand in the way of somebody else's advancement. That is a big turnoff for me. People who stand in the way of my advancing, somebody standing in the way of somebody else's advancing, that's a big turnoff for me. The opposite of that is to help somebody advance in their career. That's a big turnoff. So when Liso asked me, I never thought of it as I said yes right away. Whenever I see that my mentoring makes a difference for a mentee, that's a great feeling. Yeah. So I said yes without knowing much more than that. And then as things turn out, I found it gratifying. That's my journey into mentorship. That opened new perspectives for me as well.
Do you have a general philosophy on how you mentor a mentee?
I have a number of big takeaways that are the big themes of how I mentor somebody. One is take control of your own career. That's the top one. Nobody else would and nobody else should. Their opinions, no matter how benevolent and expert, that's not you. It's your life, not theirs. So take control of your career. How do you do that? Young people don't realize this. It's not your skills, your knowledge, and your accomplishment. It's really your relationships. Develop and nurture a ton of relationships, including mentors and then others. And with those relationships, ask for help. Ask quickly, ask often. Ask for help. That's what they are there for. Inventory and manage and develop your skills, right? That's what you need to talk about because that's how you get into a job and that's what people pay for you. That's the first thing they think about. But beyond that, there are other things. Know your strengths and your talents, how you stand out. I hammer this all the time. Learn to communicate, learn to sell, learn to tell stories. That's really the bread and butter of living in society. Really master that. Even if you don't master it, at least know those things and practice those things. Growth comes with change, and change comes with learning. And learning always starts with frustration and failures. Be prepared and choose well because you need to go through those. You want to make sure you add value. I think if you add value, I convey this to my mentee also. They don't have to. This is not a must. It's a choice. I tell them, if you add no value to anyone, think again. You're not necessary in this life. If you add value to a lot of people, wow, that's something else. That's something worth talking about. Then you need to get more organized and do something. So adding value is really important also. That's something I bring up to my mentees. It's important in developing their career. That part is not a must, it's optional, but it's important. Those are my top mentoring tenets, if I may say so.
We are the Mentoring Club. We are holding this room under the Silicon Valley Startups Club. And because this is in partnership with one of our mentors, Sean Flynn. So the Mentoring Club is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're based out of Mountain View, California. We are a global mentoring community. We have mentors and mentees in 6 continents and 25 countries now. Thank you very much, everyone. Daniel, thank you. Can't thank you enough for being our lead moderator and interviewer for today. More than just being a mentee and a volunteer, you've been a crucial part of our team here on Clubhouse. So thank you very much for that dedication.